Dedicated to the preservation of our city's history, the Gilroy Museum occupies an important piece of that heritage, a beautiful century-old library, built through the generosity of a distant tycoon and a local benefactor. Hello, welcome to the Gilroy Museum. I'm Barbara Bottini, and I'm going to be your guide for this tour. The building was designed by William Weeks and constructed in the classic style, with Greek columns and a pediment over the doorway. In 1906, Gilroy accepted the $10,000 offer of Andrew Carnegie, a Scottish immigrant who rose to be a titan of the steel industry, from a fund he established to build free public libraries. Carnegie's grant carried the requirement that the city provide the lot, the books, and the staff to serve the residents. A local civic leader, Caroline Huxett, donated a former tennis court at the corner of Church and 5th Streets as a library site. Together, she and Andrew Carnegie made possible a center of learning which has endured since it opened in July 1910. After 65 years, a new library was built on 6th Street, and this building became the Gilroy Museum, which had first been established in the basement. Now, let's go inside and start our tour. Here we are in the rotunda. On my left is the East Room, which has artifacts from the town and businesses. On my right is the West Room, where we have displays about the home life of Gilroy in the past. Behind the West Room, we have our research room. And here within the rotunda itself, we have artifacts on the Native American period, the Mexican and Spanish period, the history of John Gilroy, for whom our town was named, and we have a chair from the Civil War. This exhibit shows artifacts from the Ohlone Indians, who prefer to call themselves the Amamutsan. They were the first inhabitants of the area that later became known as Gilroy. It is thought Native Americans came to our area about 10,000 years ago. The Spanish name for tribes of the northern California coast is Costanoan. Central Valley tribes call them Ohlone, people of the West. Local tribal leaders call themselves the Amamutsan. We know of 4 clans in the Gilroy area. You are likely to be most aware of the Chictac clan that lived in the western foothills. At the museum and at Chictac Adams County Park on Watsonville Road, you can see maps showing their distribution as well as illustrations and artifacts of their way of life. The Amamutsan economy was based on hunting and gathering. In addition to deer and other game, acorns were a primary food. Chictac Adams County Park includes a giant rock covered with holes that were used for grinding acorns. In 1929, the Smithsonian's top ethnologist, John Harrington, interviewed Ascension Solorzano for 3 months before her death in January 1930 to record the indigenous language. Moving around the rotunda, we come to the exhibit which shows artifacts of the Spanish and Mexican era. After earlier overland exploration of what the Spanish called Alta California, starting with Portola's expedition in 1769, Spanish explorers arrived by sea in our area in 1772. Intending to convert native peoples to the Spanish way of life, in the late 1790s they made the Amamutsan move to live and work on mission grounds. 3 of the local clans went to Mission San Juan Bautista. At one time, there were 23 villages around Mission San Juan. The Chictac group went to Mission Santa Cruz. Used as labor to build the missions and to work their fields, the Amamutsan received poor treatment and many suffered and died from European diseases. During their internment, their culture was decimated, and their population dwindled. Within about 65 years, their numbers went from about 7,000 in the Greater Bay Area at the time of Spanish arrival to small, ghetto-like villages around the missions. By the time another 65 years had passed, only 10 full-blooded Ohlone were left. Maria Ascension Solorzano, who died in 1930 and for whom our newest middle school is named, is generally considered the last one to have been raised in the native culture and speak the Ama Mutsun language. The Spanish distributed land grants in California. Called ranchos, 2 of the original 13 were in the Gilroy area. Many of the names connected with these ranchos are familiar to Gilroyans. For instance, Rancho Las Animas was given to Mariano Castro, and Rancho San Isidro to Ignacio Ortega, both between 1800 and 1810. In 1821, a revolt against Spanish rule in Mexico brought California under the Mexican flag. Collectively, Europeans residing in California are often referred to as Californios. The primary economy was based on cattle, providing hides and tallow for trading in the port of Monterey. In the museum, you can see illustrations and artifacts of their way of life. In this section of the rotunda, we come to the history of the American era in Gilroy. In 1814, less than 50 years after the Spanish arrival, a Scottish sailor named John Cameron arrived by ship in Monterey. Due to a lack of vitamin C, Cameron had developed scurvy and was put off his ship. After he recovered, Cameron decided not to return to Europe, so he pledged allegiance to Spain and used his mother's maiden name, Gilroy, to be baptized as Juan Bautista Gilroy at the Carmel Mission. He thus became the first permanent English-speaking resident of California. Now known as John Gilroy, he traveled to Ignacio Ortega's Rancho San Isidro to make barrels for tallow. There he met Maria Clara Ortega, the owner's daughter. In 1821, they were married at Mission San Juan Bautista when he was 27 and she just 14. Together they had 17 children, 9 of whom survived infancy. Through the generations, they formed a very long family tree. Former Mayor Mike Gilroy is a descendant. When Maria's father passed away, the Gilroys received 1/3 of Rancho San Isidro. John continued to raise cattle and wheat, and in time was appointed alcalde, Justice of the Peace. The area around San Isidro, just south and east of today's Gilroy Foods, developed into a small settlement called Pleasant Valley, now often referred to as Old Gilroy. In 1843, the first wave of American settlers came by wagon train, Julius and Elizabeth Martin. Soon after, others arrived. The Martin Murphy family, Massey Thomas, and Thomas Ray. Before long, James Hawk built a stage stop on the San Jose-Monterey Road, and the focus of settlement began shifting from San Isidro to the location of today's city. In 1868, less than 100 years after the Spanish arrival, the area was incorporated as a town and named in honor of John Gilroy, who died 2 years later. By 1870, Gilroy could boast a newspaper, a fire department, and a bank, and was chartered as a city. Here in the East Room, we learn about the town's development and its economic life. As you enter the East Room, on your left, you will learn about Gilroy's time as the self-proclaimed tobacco capital of the United States. A display, complete with wooden cigar molds used to press rolled tobacco leaves, tells about the rise and fall of J.D. Culp's Consolidated Tobacco Company, as well as the employment of 900 Chinese workers. Continuing in a clockwise direction, you will encounter one of Gilroy's most famous citizens, Henry Miller. Born in Germany about the time John Gilroy married Maria Ortega, Miller emigrated to New York, then moved on to San Francisco. He began buying land around here in 1863, eventually owning 26,000 acres of Gilroy farmland. His home on Bloomfield Road had 19 bedrooms. Every summer, Miller's family spent time at Mount Madonna. He built a large summer home and other houses for his daughters at the campsite in what today is Mount Madonna County Park. You will see photographs and descriptions of Miller's homes. At Mount Madonna County Park, you can still see the foundations of his retreat. When Miller died, he left an estate worth $50 million. A display tells of Miller's involvement in the gigantic lawsuit that followed the partition of Rancho Las Animas. There are several namesakes for him. Miller Park is on land he donated, and the large trees along Miller Avenue were planted to shade his trips to Mount Madonna. This display tells the intriguing story of Henry Miller and the notorious bandit Tiburcio Vasquez. One day, while riding over Pacheco Pass, Henry Miller was accosted by Vasquez, who demanded Miller turn over all his money and any jewels. Realizing his life was worth more than the 20 gold pieces in his saddlebag, he handed it over. But then he asked the bandit Vasquez, "May I please keep one gold piece so that I can have money for food and shelter, as it will be a long while before I reach home?" Vasquez thought it over for a moment and acquiesced, handing back one gold piece. 2 years later, entering a saloon in San Miguel, Miller thought he recognized a voice of one of the patrons at the bar. Walking up, he asked the man, "Are you Tiburcio Vasquez?" The fellow turned, gave a suspicious and guarded answer, "Yes." Miller calmly reached into his pocket and placed one gold coin on the counter. "Here," he said, "now my debt to you is paid," and quietly walked out of the bar, leaving Tiburcio Vasquez dumbfounded. The next set of displays illuminates early Gilroy schools. You will see a map of those schools, desks from San Isidro School, books, photos, classroom equipment, diplomas, and photographs of the buildings and students. This large case shows formal wear that would have been worn to a party, a fancy dress ball, or the Opera House, which once stood about a block away at the corner of 5th and Eagleberry Streets. Above this case are portraits of Littleton A. Whitehurst and his wife Hetty, whose farmhouse still stands on the northeast corner of 10th and Church Street. Mr. Whitehurst owned a lumber mill west of town and was a civic leader. And this section is dedicated to Gilroy's doctors and nurses, who have always been a critical part of our community. The museum presents photos of the first Wheeler Hospital, as well as photographs and brief biographies of prominent early physicians. Included is a baby scale from a maternity home, a large scale from Dr. Chesbro's office, and a medicine case. The many facets of agriculture are featured here. Gilroy was the hub where farmers came to market and shipped their goods. You'll see a saddle, Western wear, and photographs of cowboys and ranches. A milking machine also sits on the floor. A nearby case displays photos of Gilroy's heritage as the prune capital. Ranching, with its vaqueros and cowboys, as well as a showcase about Gilroy's famous rodeo, the Gymkhana. This event was held annually from 1929 to 1956. A week-long celebration led up the rodeo, which attracted cowboys from every western state. Interesting items from Chinese homes are featured, and you will learn about Gilroy's Chinatown, the area bounded by 7th and 9th Streets, and Monterey Road and Eagleberry Street. Originally brought to California to labor on the railroads, many came to Gilroy for work in the tobacco industry between 1865 and 1882. When the tobacco business failed, many of the Chinese left town. Gilroy's Chinatown was largely destroyed by a fire in 1930. This next display shows the importance of churches and banking in our community. We also have an exposition of public servants, office holders, police, and firefighters. Artifacts include the mayor's chair and items from Old City Hall. Following are samples from the commercial life of Gilroy. A telephone switchboard. A hotel desk with suitcases and trunks. This grand desk from the Southern Pacific Hotel features several colorful ads for local businesses. A cigar store Indian used to advertise the fact that a store sold tobacco. Once there were 17 such stores on Monterey Road. File cabinets from Peters Wheeler Seed Company. A display about the seed business. A cash register and several typewriters tell about Gilroy's business operations. Another display shows photos of the changing downtown. Street signs, store goods, and old bottles reclaimed from the depths of Gilroy's outhouses. Uniforms from World War I and World War II pay tribute to the men and women who helped secure our freedom. The next display features our local aviation pioneer, Robert Fowler, the second man to fly across the U.S. Another display shows Gilroy Hot Springs, discovered in 1865 and popular as a resort for the next 100 years. After World War II, the hot springs was a refuge for Japanese Americans returning from internment camps. Today, it is part of Henry Coe State Park. The final display tells about farm pioneer Electa Owsley, a widow with 10 children who fought for the right to own the land in her own name. Her home still stands just east of Gilroy Golf Course on Hecker Pass, today inhabited by her descendants. The West Room, gives a sense of Gilroy home life in the past. As you enter, you will see the wedding dress of Helena Loretta Fitzgerald for her wedding to Alfred Allemand in 1909. There are gas lights on either side of the fireplace, should the newfangled electric lights fail. Above the fireplace is a portrait of Caroline Hoxsett, who not only donated a lot for the Carnegie Library, but also brought the Oddfellows and Rebecca Children's Home to Gilroy, then generously endowed it. The clock in Old City Hall was also her gift to the city.
Don't know why there's no sun up in the sky, stormy weather.
Ivy Anderson, Gilroy's jazz songstress and featured vocalist for Duke Ellington, is commemorated. By her photo and album is an early radio and a very small television from 1948. This magnifying glass was used to make the screen appear larger. Moving counterclockwise, you will encounter a wash basin with pitcher. Next to that is a pump organ with sheet music. The organ came all the way from Vermont by ship around the tip of South America to the Milne home on Birchall Road. Above that is a framed set of hair flowers made with human hair. These were a popular craft and decoration in Victorian times. The chamber pot was normally kept under the bed for use on those stormy nights when you didn't want to have to go to the outhouse. As part of the parlor furniture, there is a formal tea set and a hutch filled with vases and figurines, as well as a side table with an oil lamp and the wedding portrait of Margaret Cullen Fitzgerald White in 1879. The next area is devoted to an appreciation of the life of a homemaker. On display is a typical woman's dress of the late 1800s, a sewing machine, a fabric pleater, a washing machine, a hand-operated wringer, a butter churn, a carpet beater, irons, pots, and canning equipment. After this display, you will certainly understand why women's work is never done. At the end of the cabinet are household items, including ice picks, a toaster to be placed on top of a wood-burning stove, milk bottles, canning jars, and even a Sears Roebuck catalog. The last set of showcases are dedicated to more leisurely pursuits. Baseball leagues, roller skates, cracker jacks, marbles, jacks, toys and other games, dolls, makeup and hair curling irons, and doilies. Rather than being a child's toy, this is actually a furniture salesman's scale model of a chair that can be converted to a prie-dieu, a praying station. There's even a cabinet here for the storage of religious articles. In the center of the room is a beautiful Japanese kimono that was presented as a gift to John Shearer, president of Peters Wheeler Seed Company of Gilroy. As you return to the rotunda, you pass a collection of vintage telephones. This is the reference room. You'll frequently find it quite busy with people researching Gilroy's history. Here you will find a microfilm reader for delving into old issues of Gilroy's newspapers back to 1868. Bound copies of old newspapers, birth and death records. and file cabinets with folders containing photographs, old telephone directories, information about prominent Gilroyans, important buildings, businesses, and civic organizations. Decorating the reference room are an oil painting of the museum, photographs of the opening of Hecker Pass Highway in 1927, a large aerial photo of Gilroy in 1964, and tributes to pioneer aviator Robert Fowler. Thank you for joining me on this tour of the museum. If you would like more information about the museum and its resources, please visit us on our webpage.
Don't know why there's no sun up in the sky. Stormy weather, since my man and I ain't together. Keeps raining all the time. Life is bad, gloom and misery everywhere. Stormy weather, just can't get my poor self together. I'm weary all